Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Turin here with another Warhammer Total War online commentary. In this particular battle, I'm going to be playing the Vampire Counts, and I'm going to be facing off against the Greenskins. So let's get right into the army composition here. So in my front line, I do have some standard Graveguards, just armored, shielded. These guys have 90 armor, 36 melee defense, pretty good combat stats, and they trade well with Biggins. Obviously, they will suffer a little bit against Black Orcs, as they don't have armor piercing. Now, again, there's kind of a bit of a debate, at least internally in my mind. Again, bringing the Graveguards with great weapons is nice because they can deal with Black Orcs because they have armor piercing, and they also do well against Biggins because they have high armor. But these Graveguards, their melee defense is quite a bit higher, and I was kind of thinking that if I, got a more durable front line, so these two Graveguards, and then of course the Sternsman over here, that would allow the Mortis engine to last longer, essentially, because these guys would, be able to absorb more damage. It would play more into the attrition game. And also on that same note, it would really allow these Cryptors to, not be the focal point of the damage, because again, if my Graveguards with great weapons were to melt, pretty quickly due to their low melee defense, against Black Orcs especially, then the Cryptors would be subject to Biggins and other things like that. So I figured let's try a bit more of a durable front line and see how it holds up, and hopefully it can allow these Cryptors and these Mortis engines to stay the course. So aside from that, I have two White Kings on each flank. These guys are just great utility units. Even though they can't carry potions, it's nice to just have a unit like this that can break a charge or can plug in, wherever they're needed, essentially. So I do have two Skeleton Spears. So this is kind of the build I like to do, where I don't bring any Cav, I don't bring any Blood Knights, I don't play that game. And this is kind of I guess a bit of a meta tactic, because again, most people, especially Greenskins, are going to bring several groups of Orc Boy Biggins to try to deal with Blood Knights. And if you don't bring Blood Knights, they're going to be stuck fighting spears and charging into the Sternsman and Cryptors and things like that that are going to be really hard to get their paws on, essentially. So I have two groups of spears in each flank. I also have MANNFRED von Karstein. He does have the Raised Dead as well as Invocation from the Heck. So obviously Raised Dead, extremely powerful. And I figured let's try MANNFRED with some Vargheist, see how it works out, because again, you can summon zombies on top of pertinent targets, lock them down, and then the Vargheist with their extremely high weapon damage of or weapon strength, of 109 can get in there and really lay a beat down. So let's go ahead and see how this pans out. As far as my opponent's army composition goes, like I mentioned before, he does have two groups of Orc Boy Biggins, so he has one on each flank over here. And then aside from that, he has a very solid army. I really liked his composition. He has Orc Biggins, Black Orcs, Orc Biggins, Black Orcs, just intermixed in his whole front line, which is actually what I like to do in this matchup. So again, I'm a huge fan of his build so far. He does have Durusty Heirs. I don't think he has a second group of Goblin Archers, which I like to do. That's probably one of the few variants I would make to his particular composition, is adding another group of Goblin Archers. But again, they are very susceptible to the zombie spam, so you have to be careful with that. And also Vargheist are going to be very good at tearing these guys up. On top of that, he does have two Goblin Big Bosses, or is it three? Yeah, he has three Goblin Big Bosses on the poison. So again, I have to be, oh no, that's a Shaman. So that's a Night Goblin Shaman, two Goblin Big Bosses, as well as a Night Goblin War Boss. So a lot of poison. This guy also has armor piercing, and it looks like an anti-infantry bonus, but still, I have to be very careful with landing MANNFRED, because if he's able to poison him with these, well, not the Spider, well, the Spider, of course, but with the Goblin Big Bosses and lock me down, I could be in some serious trouble. So he does also have the Ragnarok Queen, which is just a great unit. It kind of functions in the same way that the zombie spam does, in that the spiders can deter charges, they can kind of, cause a rear charge bonus, just a lot of utility, and a very powerful unit. So aside from that, that's pretty much it for both of our armies. So let's get right down to the business here, guys. So again, I'm just advancing straight on, just going to meet my opponent relatively in this general area, but I figured that I should kind of fan out in this direction, because then he has to reposition his army, and if he doesn't reposition his army, what I can then do is just kind of collapse down his flank, and these units over on the far side are going to have to do a very wide sweep to get to my army composition. So sometimes I'll try readjusting my army and, hope it works out for the best, of course. So I'll go ahead and fast forward a little bit, as it does take some time to do that. So I align my forces, and you can see my opponent coming out of the forest with a group of Orc Boy Biggins. So up until this moment, I actually wasn't aware that these Orc Boy Biggins existed, but I do have Skeleton Spears here, and then also a group here. So if I micro these effectively, I should be able to shut down his Orc Boy Biggins and essentially nullify their value, because a group of Skeleton Spears can honestly probably kill a group of Orc Boy Biggins and just straight up sustain combat. So pretty good situation here. And something that's very important, guys, in this particular matchup, if you are using this type of a build with Graveguards in the front line, you want to make sure to get your Graveguards on the Biggins and then get the Cryptors on Black Orcs. The poison is so good against Black Orcs, and of course they do have armor piercing with 70 weapon strength, so it's imperative that you do that if you really want to trade efficiently here. So anyways, sorry about that small delay there. So again, I'm just positioning my Vargheist over on the far side, just waiting for an opportunity. So right now, I actually just discovered Durusty Heirs, which was definitely a scary discovery to make, and he is using his Orc Boy Biggins to protect them, which is very smart. So very well played on my opponent's part. You can see on that same coin, I do set up a group of skeleton spearmen over here to kind of distract and, you know, watch these orc boar biggins. And I do summon some zombies here. So these zombies are just so strong. They're literally going to shut down these missile troops, and they won't be firing again for some time. It also does occupy a group of orc boar biggins. Not doing any serious HP damage, but regardless, I'm not taking that missile fire, which is quite nice. So over here, I do summon another group of zombies, and I wanted to block up these troops because I saw his Goblin Big Boss and his other heroic units getting in there, so I wanted to just distract them and keep them from getting to the front line. The Mortis engine here is in pretty good position. It has a nice drain on these black orcs. It is draining the Arachnar Queen, which isn't as pertinent, but still, it's in a good position and it's relatively safe, right in the middle of a big, important melee battle. So the Vargheist have just kind of been circling around looking for an opportunity to fly in. And right now, you know, now that there's just more and more zombies getting saturated, and you can see I summoned a second wave, they're actually starting to do a little bit of HP damage, maybe 5 to 7%, but more importantly, it just butters them up. It's like buttering the bread. You know, these guys are going to come in and, I guess, butter their bread, you could say. But the Vargheists are going to destroy these Rusty Errors. And we can go ahead and get a nice slow-mo beatdown, which is always great. So you can see the Gobos flying through the air. And Vargheists, you know, again, I haven't seen them a lot in the contemporary meta, but, you know, I think there's places for them. And especially with the zombie spam, you can provide a lot of cover for them, because in any other circumstance, these Orc Boar biggins would just run them down and stop them from killing the Rusty Errors. But with all these zombies here, they can't do anything. They literally can't engage. They'd have to push through all this fodder, and you can see the goblins just, you know, taking tumbles, and essentially they're shattered. I mean, almost. They're broken. They're at 50% HP and rapidly tanking against that 100 weapons rank. And MANNFRED, of course, is continuing to circle and just summon zombies and cast Invocation on the Hex, so he actually joins the party right there, and it's definitely going to be the end of these two particular units. In the front line, we have a pretty heated battle. You can see that the Orc Boar biggins here are fighting skeletons and kind of a Graveguard, which is a good trade for me, but still he has been using the Little Wa to buff his melee forces, so he's been trading pretty well here. You can see my Graveguard down to 36 models actually against biggins, which is pretty impressive for my opponent. Over here, his Black Orcs were able to kind of collapse that center flank. You can see a lot of my troops there kind of consolidated here, so he probably will be pushing in on me in just a moment. Over here, the Cryptors are doing pretty well. They're in okay shape. I mean, these ones are, I believe, 4 models, but I do have another group around here that's relatively healthy. The Arachnar Queen, though, unfortunately for me, hasn't taken much damage, so very, very bad situation. You know, I was hoping the Cryptors and the Mortis engine would be able to lay more into it a little bit more, but he was using the Spider spawns to kind of saturate. You don't see them now, but he was summoning them and blocking my Cryptors, and the Cryptors were wasting their attack animations on those, which is very tough, so very well played. Over here, it's going quite a bit better for me. You can see these Cryptors are laying a smackdown on these Black Orcs, relatively speaking. They are down to 43 models. I also have the Stearnsmen over here, who are obviously annihilating these Orc biggins. So a lot of give and take in this battle. Each of us is kind of winning in our respective areas, and it's a very, very good fight so far. So over here, this was definitely a very scary point. The Vargheist, again, continuing to do work, and I'm still just spamming zombies. Just as much fodder as I can to lock down these biggins and keep them from getting where they want to be. A MANNFRED did get trapped, though. This is a very, very scary moment. You can see MANNFRED in here. He kind of has a few zombies on his flank protecting him, but my opponent pulled everything. He pulled the Arachnar Queen, he pulled his Goblin Big Boss, both of them. He pulled his Night Goblin War Boss, and he's just going deep trying to get MANNFRED. Because again, if he's able to get MANNFRED, it will definitely turn the tides of this battle. So I summon another group of zombies here and just use them to kind of occupy these biggins over here so that MANNFRED could slip through. And you can see he's like pushing and just getting trapped in between all these giant orcs. But thankfully the Vargheists are fighting. They're doing really well. They still have all 9 models, and they're doing a lot of HP damage to these biggins here. But again, my opponent, thankfully for me, he is force targeting on MANNFRED, so he's not attacking my other units. And you can see the Spider just getting locked down by zombies. So again, so much utility from that ability. It is just so darn strong. So definitely cannot complain at all. Over here, the biggins are getting routed finally, and they are terrified, which is great. So again, the Mortis engine, just so good against Greenskins. Against Black Orcs, it will struggle a little bit. I mean, it'll still be good if you can protect it with fodder, but it does cause terror. So it routes off these biggins, and then the rest of these units and some Cryptors. This last Cryptor, actually, it's crumbling, but with its last breath, it's coming over to deal with these Black Orcs, and it's doing a darn good job, so definitely can't complain here. These Skeletons are doing pretty solid. Over here, I did miss this engagement I wanted to show you guys, but he did engage with these biggins, and these Skeleton Spears were able to head them off. And look at the damage they took. They lost 10 models, and those biggins lost, you know, over half their HP in a multitude of models. So very, very effective trading there from these Skeleton Spearmen. Also, something else I would like to suggest to you guys is, against Greenskins, they don't have a lot of solid magic damage. So just throw a Banshee in your army. It'll cause terror, and it'll be almost impossible to kill. They're usually going to have to kill it with, you know, army losses or, you know, crumbling or things like that, or rear charging it to break its leadership. So Banshees are a very, very good pick, and you're going to get a ton of value. So right now I'm starting to form a bit of a Death Star here. I pulled some of my troops over from this flank. You can see the Sternsmen are kind of abandoning their post over here and just coming over to join this particular party here. So that's going to be really nice, because in the long game, the Mortis Engine, you can see it's, those guys actually just died, but you can see the Mortis Engine is providing perpetual healing to my units here. Of course, some of them may be relatively close to their healing cap, having received several invocations of Nehek, but still, it's doing really good. Mortis Engine is by far one of my favorite units on the Vampire Accounts roster. It's just so good. So thankfully for me, I still have a very healthy group of Vargheist. These guys racked up 68 kills, a lot of those on Orc Borbo Biggins or Durusty Errors, so definitely cannot complain. So we're advancing right now. I formed my Death Star, and my opponent did reform his ranks here. And thankfully, I was able to pull MANNFRED out, which was a huge, scary thing. But MANNFRED right now, these Black Orcs are separated from his main army. So you can see MANNFRED summoning a group of zombies right here. So they're going to rise from the ground and just block these Black Orcs up, which is going to be really bad for my opponent, because it'll keep them from reuniting with the Spider and some of their other heroic units. So you can see the zombies coming out of the ground and ambushing the Black Orcs in the forest, which is a really cool scenic shot, actually. So they're coming out of the ground, blocking them, and they are shaken and steady already. And then the Vargheist come in and just do massive damage. And even though these guys are, I guess you could say armored, the Vargheist with their high weapon damage are still going to do a ton of work, and they're shaken, and they're getting routed off pretty quickly. You can see they're actually favored, which is going to be pretty solid. Will definitely tip the power bar in my favor. So the Mortis Engine and the rest of the troops come in to aid the Vargheist, because again, I don't want to leave them in sustained combat versus very elite Black Orcs. So I'm able to rout those guys off. These zombies are also obstructing my opponent's advances. A lot of the Biggins over here are getting trapped on them, which is a very, very good situation for me. But still, these Biggins got a little bit of a wrap on some of these Vargheist, so they should be able to do okay over there. Let's go ahead and take an overhead view and just take account of this particular battle. So he does have some Orc Borboy Biggins coming over here. So MANNFRED actually dives them, and I do pull some Skeleton Spears over here to intercept them. Sometimes the pathing was a little bit weird. I did click them directly on it, but some of the Biggins slipped by. But still, the Spears are so darn good against these type of units. Obviously, having an anti-large bonus and the low armor of the Orc Borboy Biggins is going to be a pretty good synergy, for me at least. So these Skeleton Spears actually have 24 weapon strength. So with anti-large bonus, they're going to hit these guys like trucks. And MANNFRED is still in great health. And let's go ahead and see where he is. He's nowhere near his healing cap, so definitely a lot of, just raw HP that my opponent has to get through. And the longer this Mortis Engine is just sitting here draining all these troops, it's going to be really, really tough to my opponent. You can see he does get his Arachnarch Queen and kind of six it on the Mortis Engine, trying to finish it off to the best of his ability, because that's kind of one of his last-ditch efforts here. But the Queen, again, it's just simply coming down to armor loss. It's still in pretty good health, but it's taking a lot of damage. It's now surrounded. And the Mortis Engine itself hits very hard. It has 96, it's actually poisoned. It has over 100 weapon strength when not poisoned. And it does have armor piercing. So at that point, we are able to pull out the W. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. It was a great battle. Definitely good compositions on both sides. And there was just a few things that, had they gone a little differently, I think either of us could have won that battle for sure. As far as my build, I think the Sternsmen and the sturdier front line paid off. Now, I used to like spamming the great weapons, but I found that these guys with the Mortis Engine, they just last a bit longer, and they allow that Mortis Engine and those Cryptors to shine. Granted, 3 kills and 22 kills doesn't necessarily justify that point, but that's simply because I had them beating on the Arachnarch Queen for like 45 minutes, and he did a very good job of summoning fodder on them and kind of obstructing them and making the pathing very awkward. The Spears did a great job at dealing with the Cav. It was also a very good meta pick because it mitigated, the essential risk of Blood Knights, and well, not Blood Knights, but it mitigated the Orc Borboy Biggins mobility. It kind of forced them into a defensive posture, which was nice. His Black Orcs and Biggins performed pretty well as expected. The Little Wad did pretty well. And, again, I guess the Biggins didn't necessarily pay for themselves. They were just fighting zombies most of the time. And that was definitely a really tough situation. It's very hard for the Greenskins to get the Mortis Engine. I found that to be one of my biggest issues when facing the Vampire Counts. Again, having maybe... so maybe I guess my suggestion would be, and again, I don't know how effective it would be because the zombie spam is so darn strong, but having Durusty Airs and maybe 1 or 2 more groups of Goblin Archers, keeping a group of Biggins or, really heavy damage dealing infantry near them, killing the zombies, and then shooting down the Mortis Engine. But again, that all sounds nice on paper, but, with the 2 or 3 second cooldown of the zombie spam, it's really hard to deal with. But anyways, very well played to my opponent, last night's leftovers. I look forward to seeing you again on Ladder, and hope you guys enjoyed that Vampire cast. Have an excellent night, and take care.